Hello, and welcome to Seafood Matters Podcast, the voice of the UK seafood industry. I'm your host, Jim Cowie. In this episode, I am talking with Jon Christensen, a fishery scientist from Iceland.
I am educated in Oslo, in the University in Oslo, in freshwater biology. I was there. Got an exam in 1970, and I have been working all the time since then in this field. I started to work at the Freshwater Institute in Reykjavik, and I was the first scientist to be there, and to look at the lakes, what did we have in the lakes, and so on and so forth. So I worked there for 17 years. I was responsible for trout and salmon, investigating populations in the water, and so on. But then I left this position, and I started for myself in 1986. And I have been working privately all the time since then. And I'm never, I have never suspended myself. So I'm still doing some research to keep me going on. I'm mainly working now with salmon rivers and estimating population of salmon par and monitoring the growth and the density.
It's an enormous subject.
Yes, but when I started my own business, I did different things, very, very many different things. I worked for the insurance companies in the fish farming sector by inspecting the farms and renewing the contracts and doing losses and so on. I was there for 5 years, and I got a lot of experience by that. And in this period, I was in contact with the Scottish people. Because we got them here to help us. There was Jan McFarlane. Maybe you know Jan McFarlane.
I know of him, yeah.
So he was here and showing us and looking at things here, and built a hatchery, by the way. But after that, when the fish farming sector, cage in the sea, died, as I say, because it died because of mistakes and weather conditions, freezing, etc. And it took many, many years for it to start again. So the only thing left in this sector was the production of smolts and par to release into the rivers, which we have found little by little is completely useless thing. It's very useless. And my colleague once said to a fishing company that was had set aside money to buy some smolts to put in the river to increase the fisheries. What is the best way for us to spend this? He said, well, if you are going to get something out of it, change all your money in 100 krona bills and make a little paper boat and let them float along down the river. Then you have something out of it. So, but that is true. It has been no effect of this in the days, because they were releasing par into river stretches that were already fully populated.
Yeah.
Yes. Then I started with shrimp research. First in Iceland for a private company, because he didn't like the quotas that the Marine Institute set and their methods and so on. So I was there to help them. And then I went with a trawler down to the Flemish Cup in shrimp research. And that was very interesting. 5 weeks on a trawler and collecting samples 5 years after that, either by going short trips or getting it home, the samples. So I wrote a lot about that. And I found out, as always, that there was no overfishing of shrimp, as people said. It was completely normal. But it is so with shrimp that you have to make shrimp grounds. My friend who got me on this trawler, he has been for 15 years creating shrimp fishery north of Iceland. Nobody had done this before, and it started to increase. The more you fish, the more shrimps were there. There's a simple reason for that. I think shrimps, or they must be cannibals, and they are feed for the certain fish like cod. And by fishing, you hold the balance in the system. And it's very notably that after the trawls left the Flemish Cup, because shrimp price went down and the oil price went up and it was not profitable, there were only a few boats left, but their catch didn't increase. It decreased when this big fleet of several hundred boats left. So that was the experience. I saw the same thing in the shrimp as I saw in the Arctic char in the lakes.
Wow.
But the difference was that there were much more samples. There were much more of them. So I saw the same thing. Growth, maturity, or change of sex was density dependent. If it was a little food, they changed males to females earlier at smaller size. If there was plenty of food, they increased this length. Exactly the same as fish in the sea or in the lakes. The food, when the food is limited, they have to spawn because otherwise you will die.
Yeah.
In the evolution, it is best. They are all aiming at having the maximum number of eggs to bring their genes forward in a population, right? And when you increase the body size, you increase the number of eggs. So they wait to have one go very big. But if the food is short, they can't do that because then they will die from starvation before they lay their eggs. So they when the food is being limited, they spawn. So you can, by measuring the size, first spawning size of fish anywhere, you can determine how good they behave, how good they are, how the food supply versus the number of fish eating it is in balance or not. So in lakes, rule of thumb was if there was a lot of small fish, you had to fish it out, as we say. You should catch more and catch the smallest fish because they are starving and underpopulated. Immediately, what?
I think if I remember correctly, Jon, you advised that in the North Sea with haddock some years past.
Yes, you see, this is what we knew or know about freshwater fish, and all in the freshwater branch, especially in Norway. The overpopulation was a problem. If you didn't fish, you got overpopulation, and if you caught the big ones, as they do, usually you will always have the biggest one. By selecting the big ones, the problems get still worse because they are often cannibals and they control the population below there. or smaller than them. But if you remove them, you get a bigger problem. That's what happened in the North Sea. But you see, I had this experience when I came in, it was in 2003. First thing we did was to go to the fish market in Aberdeen. And I went with a TV crew, in fact, to investigate this overfishing, right, and catching small fish and killing everything and so on. And everybody said that they were killing so much that there were only small fish left in the North Sea. So the first thing we did was to go to the fish market in Aberdeen. And what I saw was hundreds of boxes of small, herring-sized almost, haddock. But at the end of each row of boxes, there was boxes, many boxes with eggs, with roe. Where does this roe from? No, it comes from the haddock. Well, then I understood overpopulation in the North Sea. I knew these symptoms immediately, and later I came to age these fish and see how old they were. And these herring-sized fish, they were 4 years old, 4 or 5 years old. An Icelandic one would be 2 kilos at that age. So there is a shortage of food. And I looked at the cod. Besides, also cod at the same size was slim. Okay, they are competing for the same food. So, understandably, there was a lack of fishery, too low fishery. And what has happened in this North Sea? The fleet is gone. When was it best in the North Sea? When the Russians and the Germans and the Poles and the Lithuanians was helping you to catch fish in the North Sea. That all disappeared in 1976 or something. They were thrown out. Then it started to decline. And even the effort of the British fleet was greatly reduced. You see it on the curve if you look at the data. So how in the bloody heaven can it be overfishing then, when the fleet has disappeared? What we see now is oil platforms. We don't need any ships anymore. And when you look back, despite all this fishery, no fish stock was fished out. They didn't manage to fish out the North Sea then, but now with only 10% of that fleet, they are overfishing it. It's not possible.
Yeah.
So all the symptoms, it was the same as in the lake, which is very violent. But what happened in the 50s or something, there was a divorce between freshwater biology and marine fish biology. And they don't talk together anymore. The freshwater biology say you are doing wrong, but person to person. But if they say it often officially, they risk to lose the jobs.
Yeah,
you have to say what they mean is right. And if you see an institute, a marine institute, all the persons working there, they say the same thing. In fact, one person could rule everything. If you say something wrong, you lose grants and you lose works and programs and so on. So they are, in order to meet in Copenhagen every year, they have to be very good, and they have to see the same prayers as everybody else. It's very strange.
Do you think, going on from that, but staying in the same principle, the situation we have in Shetland, around the Shetland waters just now, there is an enormous amount of cod, huge amount of cod, and yet the quota has been cut, and boats are going fishing in areas, and they are having to leave it because there's too much cod. And the fear with the fishermen are that the cod is because there's a shortage of haddock and an overabundance of cod. From what you have said there now, do you relate that together?
I mean, this is so in the marine sector, in the scientific sector. Everything is explained by overfishing. Everything. And I mean, they don't see what other people see. If you see a lot of fish, they say no. And I remember once they had great service in the North Sea many years ago, where they were trying to find out why the recruitment of cod was so low in their eyes, was so low. And they were investigating whitefish. What do you call it?
Whiting?
Whiting, yes. It was suspected that the whitings were eating the cod.
Yeah.
Or young cod, because they have a lot of teeth in their mouth and they look very ugly and dangerous. Yeah. They found out the result of this was that there were almost no cod found in the stomachs of the whitings, but they had mostly empty stomach, and they were full of parasites. And as I say in the report, our scientists noticed that they were very thin, full of parasites, and small black liver. Yeah. But they didn't understand what is so. It's a simple time of starvation. But they didn't see it. They didn't know it. They are incompetent. If you as an experienced biologist by the lake fishery, you see immediately what is wrong. And if you analyze the food, you see something is wrong. The same was in the Faroe. They said to me once, when the fish was starving in Faroe, I saw it. I said, you have to increase the effort. And everybody looked at me, increase the effort? Unheard. So they said they are now are more frequently caught with the mackerel and the other pelagic fish than the cod. And then I asked, what was in their stomach? They're seeking feed upwards in the sea. What was in it? No, sorry, I don't have to mention it. Was it this and that? Was it crabs and sea stars? Yeah. But that is the menu. That's the last thing they eat. They have nothing to eat, so they go up in the sea. They were hungry, but nobody would accept that this could exist. That the sea was that they were starving. Why don't they go everywhere else, somewhere else? Because there are fish there also. I mean, they deny these facts. Yeah. And probably you know that trawling has been banned on the Faroe Bank for 20 years plus. There's no catch there. If they survey, they will not open it because they survey, there is no cod, but there are skates and all kinds of other fish. But my father told me he was delivering fish from Iceland in the war. And they were, when they filled the cod, the trawlers up in Iceland, and they went to England, and they stopped on the Faroe Bank to fill up because as time goes, it shrinks in the ship. So they used to fill up at the Faroe Banks, and it was everybody was fishing, but they closed it for 20 years. Nothing happens. It is still closed.
Yeah. I know that they reckoned in this country after the Cod War, when the boats were stopped fishing in Faroe as well, and the Aberdeen trawlers that used to trawl in the Faroe Bank, they stopped. They were stopped, and just exactly what you're saying, and the fishing went down.
Yeah. I mean, cod is a local creature. We have fjords here where the trawlers were fishing on the north side of this fjord, one particular fjord, but they didn't fish on the south side. Why was that? Because there was a less quality in the fish. It was smaller and with worms and so on. So the north part was fished, but the south part not. And they were small because nobody was fishing there.
Yeah.
But what is a fishing ground? It's a spot where the trawlers or fishermen come every year at certain times and fish. And next time they come, they always catch fish. But if they stop fishing, the fish will disappear. And I once talked to a skipper, a trawl captain. I said, Ingolfur, do you remember any fishing spot that you have cleared out by fishing? He looked at me and thought for a while. He said, no, because it's not exhaustible, it's renewable. And no fish stocks has ever been fished out by fishing. You can't even fish out a lake. It's impossible. And I read research from a Norwegian scientist, 100 years old, Knut Dahl. He was the guy who found out that by thinning out the population, you increase the growth and you increase the catch and the production by fishing. He wanted to estimate the population. And he did it. It was a small lake. And he did it by tagging fish and recapture. You see, if you tag 100 and you catch 50, that's the half of the population. So you can calculate the size of the stock. This is often done. But he said, there was a little sentence I didn't notice first time I read it, but later. He said, the strange thing was, it was very easy to recover 30% of the tags, but I never could get more than 50%. When he had caught half of the population, there was nothing more to catch because fish had learned to avoid the game. And through my net fishing in numerous Icelandic lakes for 40 years, I know this is true. They know how to avoid nets by experience, because once they usually swim through the nets, right? But when they grow older, suddenly something tickles them. What was that? Next time they come, they have to struggle to get free. Third time maybe they come and they have to wait 1 or 2 days to empty the stomach to get away. And they say, I'll never do this again.
That's really fascinating, because one of the problems the fishermen feel here is they call it a flawed science, because the stock assessments are made by the research vessels. They are going to the same, every year they go back to the same grounds in the same area, and they do their counts. And the fishermen just feel it's a flawed science. As they say, areas that they fished 10 years ago, they're not fishing there now, but areas where there was no fish 10 years ago, that's where they're fishing now.
Yeah, we have the same method in estimating the number of grouse in Iceland. You go to the same spot every year at the same time. You fire 5 shots in northwest direction, and you count the ptarmigers or the grouse that are dead. I mean, this put it in another light, but this is really the same thing. Another thing which is very important, they try to catch all sizes of fish, even the smallest, and they have a mesh height in the bag which retains this small fish. They have very small mesh in the trawl. What does that mean? It means that there is a very difficult for the current to go through. So you have a pressure wave in front of the trawl, and when the fish comes in, and usually you should get caught by the current, there is no current, so they swim out again. So the bigger a fish has the capability to avoid the trawl, swim out of it, because you are trying to catch the small ones. And I saw similar things in the Irish Sea. I was in the Irish Sea on a trawler. We were out of Dublin, and we were trawling with a semi-pelagic trawl. And for 7 hours, and we got, I think, 20 or 30 boxes of haddock. But on the echo sounder, you saw it was in the trawl in front. It was moving up all the time. It went out in the roof of the trawl, which is known from video recording. Haddock escapes upwards. So the quantity they caught was in no relation with the abundance of the fish on spot. People, they think really that trawl catches everything in front of it. You've heard that.
Yep.
We know this is not so. We have seen films, and they go under the bobbins and so on, over the trawl, out of the meshes. And recently, the Marine Institute here answered a question of what do you think is the catch percent of the trawl? They were in fact asked for what percentage a line fishery could take from what percentage of fish it would take from the stock. They didn't know because it can't be investigated, but they knew that their investigation on trawl fishing showed that the catchability of the trawl was about 20%.
Wow.
So if you go over one ground and you catch 20%, then you turn back, go over the ground again, you catch 20% of what is left. And then again, this goes ad infinitum. You can't fish out the stock. Besides, pictures show that trolls swim ahead of the rock pocket. But when there is a stone, they go behind the stone and let it go over it. They know exactly what they're doing. So a trawl is a very primitive fishing gear, if we say so. And another interesting thing from Faroes is that they catch mainly skate or pollock. Yeah. But they catch it on pair trawlers. Pair trawlers, they have a trawl between them, as they do in North Sea, as Peter Bruce does.
Yeah.
They can't. The haddock. The skate is very, very. It's very difficult to catch it in an ordinary trawl with drawers.
Yeah.
Because they avoid it. So they don't catch everything. Fish learn and they know how to avoid it and so on. And another thing which is interesting from the Faroes, you probably know Olaf Olsen.
Yeah.
in the Faroes. He is a former fishery minister. He was on Icelandic trawlers in very, very long ago. And he was replenishing or renewing his fleet. They bought so-called Cuba trawlers from Cuba when Castro sold them because fishermen could flee from Cuba on the trawlers. So he sold them to Faroe. And he was renewing it, and they were catching. He has a very, very good statistics of all his life, what they bought, food supply, how much they quoted, and what the price was, where it's called the beta files. Have you heard about the beta files?
No.
It's all of Olsen's life work recording of all activities in his firm all the time. Cuts, everything. When he got the new trawlers, he was not allowed to have them bigger than the others. They were built in Spain. They were bigger, more powerful. They had better rooms and beds and so on.
Yeah.
But they used the same gear, same trawl, same thing. But when they came, they caught a double of what the old trawlers caught. Why was that? Do you have idea about why is that? They were exactly the same thing, same spots, same power, everything like, except for the sound.
Wow.
There was a new sound for the fish. Fish learns to recognize sound.
I have heard.
And suddenly there is a sound. What?
I have heard that from a Faroe, another Faroese.
Yeah, I mean, you can say prove it, but this indicates that they were not aware when the new trawl came around. Not new motor, new.
I remember a very good friend of mine in Faroes said that they discovered that with the jiggers as well when they went to the electric.
Yes.
You know, when they went from the mechanical jiggers to electronic and there was no sound, they'd have much better catch.
Yeah, but another thing interest from the jiggers in Iceland is that you are fishing normally. Then a trawler comes around. Then it stops to bait. And they wait until the trawler is far away. Then they start to bite again. They are alert. Guys, be careful now. Trawler is coming. Why not say that? I mean, these are, if they were not intelligent, as I say, they would eat stones. Wouldn't they?
Yeah, you're...
If you go from...
You're certainly putting a new perspective on it, that's for sure. You know, because I don't think ever... Yeah.
When I was a boy, spinners in the freshwater fishery was introduced. Spinners, you know, or spoons, or what you call it. And it caught very well for several years. But try it now. It gives nothing. They have long ago learned that this is not food. And they arrest each other by releasing pheromones. This is dangerous. That's the communication. That's putting out pheromones to alert to others. So this is. I was once filming a salmon in a river, and I put a GoPro camera on a piece of board and let it drift down the river with a line in the end, and I could manipulate it a little bit. I saw this board, which is 1 feet long, floating. I saw a stream of salmon, and when this wood piece floating approached the school, they divide it in all directions. Why should they do that? It's just a piece of food floating on the water. What do they see, this piece of water? They see it as a duck. And they remember from they were young, ducks ate them. So if you saw a duck, go hide.
Okay.
And this was in their memory. I mean, how can someone find their way back to their own river and even same spawning spot? They remember. So they remember this. And the fly, they take the fly only the first when they earned it. I think this is a reminder of their young days when they were catching insects. They take the fly, but after a while they don't bite because I don't know why, but that's a fact. So fish learn.
Yeah. Jon, do you think from what you've said already about the monitoring and things, I mentioned in one of the questions I would like to ask you is about my own experience from my fishing village in Helmsdale. There was the Murray Firth. There was a huge, that whole area from Wick down Leibster, Helmsdale, right round by Lossiemouth, Banff, Hopmanburg Head, out by Bucky. There was an enormous amount, hundreds of boats every day fished there. And now there is not one boat fishing there. And there's no boats left in that area. It's just small sort of creel boats, lobsters, crabs, things. And if any whitefish boat goes into that area, they could catch nothing.
No, the fish got bored of waiting for them.
Pardon?
No, it is. This is the experience. This is the evidence I use, and many. But the scientists today, they only believe in the computer. But yes, I was in the fjord with a seiner in the fjord of Forth, isn't it, outside?
Yeah.
Norton?
Yeah.
And we caught. I think we caught 60 tons or something, but we only landed 9 tons. It was just discarded.
Okay.
Because they had a quota. And they selected the best fish. But in such area, the fish are starving and they eat out. And how to explain that? If you have, you know that a sheep, they can overgraze. And if you have 100 sheep in a lot, in a place that normally could carry 50, they would eat out all the grass and try to starve. But if you remove them and you put 2 or 3 in, they will also starve because when it is eaten down, it only takes a few ones to carry on this eating because they are faster than the grass grows, you see? So if you overpopulate, you need only few to hold it in that state, the food supply. And the best example of this is the coal box. You know the coal box?
Yeah.
It is in the North Sea out of Holland or Denmark.
Yeah, yeah.
It was a heavily fished area and gave very lot of fish for many, many, many years. Then they closed it because the fish was small, and they said recruitment will increase if they get more time to grow. When they investigated later, there is much less fish in the protected area than there is outside the protected area. And their explanation, the biologist's explanation, was that the trawlers didn't disturb the bottom and bring the insects free so they could eat them. So they went to the borderline and they were patrolling, and there was more food there. But of course, it was overpopulation. They ate out everything, and then there is nothing left. The same with shrimp, or no, not shrimp, but prawns. If you protect an area for 3 or 4 years, there's nothing left when you come back. So it's the same thing everywhere.
Yeah.
But scientists today, they don't listen.
Is that the area you're talking about there? Was that just off of Heligoland?
Yes. It's the place box.
They used to catch a lot of smaller sized codlings.
Yes, you must have read it in the paper I directed you to. It was about that area, an example. Yeah. And in fact, as I have said, there is not anywhere are the results of the fishing management. Fishery management should increase the catches in the long run, right? That was called management, to increase and stabilize the catches. Everywhere where they have tried it, the fishery is much less than when they started, and even a fraction of it now.
Yeah, the worrying thing just now from our point of view with that principles is our government are cutting off areas. They're calling them marine MPAs, marine protected areas.
Oh, let me know. Yes.
And that's exactly what they're going to do, and they're wanting to do it. So between areas that's going to be marine protected areas and others that they are putting renewable energy wind farms, and that the fishermen are worried that they're losing fishing grounds all the time, every year.
Yes, and that's another religion. That's the CO2 pollution. I mean, this is the life for the plants. So this man-made what you say, global warming, it is not so. It's a lie. It's just a plain lie to collect money.
Yeah,
and it's strange that people even do believe it, but this is a religion.
We call it left-wing media.
Yes, same here. But if you look at the catch record from Faroes from 1905, you have seen it from 1905 to dato. There are 40,000 tons catch of cod before the World War. And it's more or less stable. But then you have the World War, and it goes down to almost nothing because all the foreigners went away. So this was, in fact, during the war, it was a marine protected area. After the war, you should expect that a lot of fish had collected, but it went to the same level again, about 40,000 tons, but not more, because it's for only 5 years. And after that, you see there are more fluctuations in the stock. There are periods with low fishery and high fishery, and it gets more quick. The lows get more frequent and deeper after by time. This is because, I think this is because they were extending their fishery limits, the Faroes. Earlier, the British trawlers were fishing inside the fjords up to the shore, everywhere. But when they were restricted to do this, you got these collapses. And now, they are not average of 40,000 tons or 20,000 tons, but 5,000 tons or something. And we've seen it happen. Fish comes starving into the harbors even to look for food. And they fish from a pier with nets. But then next year they have disappeared. They're dead. They still won't understand. And the other thing, you said a lot of boats. I was looking at a film, a Norwegian film, about the Lofoten fisheries.
Yeah.
Which is the spawning ground for the Barents Sea cod. They have been fishing there for 1,000 years. And in the Middle Ages, 500, the export of this dried cod from Lofoten was 80% of the total export of Norway.
Yeah.
And they show a British film that was made in 1952. And then the fleet at Lofoten was 4,000 vessels.
Yeah.
4,000 vessels. They have been trying to fish out that stock for 1,000 years, but they have not succeeded. I think they will have help from the British or the Icelanders to fish out. They are experts from that, right? Icelanders are always overfishing and British are always overfishing. So they might help the Norwegian to ruin the stock. Now,
Yeah.
point at it. I mean, never has a fish stock been caught out or whatever. I was doing a research in the Irish Sea in 2003. Went out with a trawler, and the captain said that earlier the haddock was so rare that they took it home to cook it. It was just very, very rare fish there. Now it was a lot of haddock there. So when I went to read an old 100 years old report on the investigation in the Irish Sea, it says one place, haddock is a guest in the Irish Sea. He comes and goes with 10 years interval.
You know, you say that, you've just reminded me of a very funny story my father used to tell about the Murray Firth that we were talking about. And he's used to tell the story that there was two boats fishing together and they were talking on the radio, and one says to the other about trying to catch a haddock, and the other skipper came back to him. This is just after the war. The other skipper replied to him, "The next haddock you'll see is in a glass case in a museum."
Yeah.
And he said it's cyclical, but they started catching them again for right up until recently when it stopped, when there's been no fishing.
Yeah, and I have been doing a bit research on the data on the spawning recruitment relationships, which they usually do as a linear plot. A lot of dots, and then they draw a regression line in it. But if you look at it by time, you can see that the catch or the spawning stock size is varying, and the recruitment is varying, and they are in opposite phase, which means that when the spawning stock is high, the recruitment is low, and vice versa. The big spawning stocks come from the low recruitment. I mean, they're inverse relationship. Therefore, as they have been trying in Iceland, is to protect the spawning grounds and by catching less. And the spawning stocks has increased from they started this, and since the mackerel came here and became a food for a big fish, it is 4 times as it is. It's never been bigger. but the recruitment is at a very low level. And why is that? Because when the stock or spawning stock is big, the stock is big, and there is a shortage of food, which limits the size of the stock. There is no room for new recruits. There is no food for them. They will have no role in life. Why they can't expand? Because there is not food. So when the big ones dies out, then there is a room for a new generation. And this is very clear for all stocks, almost all stock. I have investigated both in the North Sea, in the Faroes, and so on. There is an inverse relationship between these things, because food limits the size of the stocks. And you have, by catching, you bring balance between the stock size and the food supply. Simple.
Jon, I love the way you almost, if you don't mind me saying it, I'm not wanting to put words in your mouth, but listening to you, you're almost at one with nature, because all you're talking about is balance and harmony. You're not trying to beat anything or defy nature. You're talking about the balance. All your words, balance and harmony. I think it speaks so loud.
Yes, I have been working with salmon in 40 years, and it's by surveying the rivers, estimating the population of parr and the growth of parr and so on. And what I see, the newest trend in salmon fishery is catch and release. In two beliefs, both there will be more fish in the river for the other people to catch or play with. They're not catching it, they're playing with it.
Yep.
And it will increase the spawning, and you will get a bigger stock, and so on and so forth. By looking at all this data, I see that the opposite things happens. The salmon fishery is going down, even if we release half of the fish again into the river. And if you look at Scotland, when there was very high fishery for a long time, when they were fishing at sea and drafts and all things like that. And later, when they remove this gear from the sea and start catching only in the rivers, the catch go down. And even if they start to release, it goes down. I was in Ireland doing survey there when the last year, when they had allowed to use drift nets. I was engaged by the fishermen to look into this thing. And I heard that next year they should stop the fishery and weren't allowed to start it again. And I said to them, this fish only have one effect. There will be less fish in your rivers. Wow, they didn't believe that. 4 years later, I read in an Irish paper, salmon fishery is very much down, despite all nets are being removed from the sea. And if you then look at it's very difficult to estimate the density of the fish in the river. And high density is seen as a good thing. But if you look at the long time research in what I use mostly to determine the fate of the salmon stock is the growth of the parr. And you see that O+, the first the fingerlings that hatch in the spring, they never or almost never are more than 4 centimeters long in the fall. And they reach this size in August. And next year in May, they are just as long. They have not grown from August, even if the summer is long. And they are all this period are they are 4 centimeters. And even now they are going down because the spawning is too high. In one river particular, I have been studying, their spawning stock is about 20 to 30 females per kilometer. In this river, there is an impossible fall. And above it, it's 3-4 kilometers with a river. In that area, we put 2 to 3 females per kilometer instead of 30. What happened was that the growth of these guys the first summer above the fall in a higher altitude were 5.5 centimeters. They were 3 times as heavy than below the waterfall, and they were more of them. Why is that? They eat out all the fish and then they start to starve and die if the spawning stock is too high. And I have seen it even in the east fjords where they grow very slowly above the fall, where they released a few salmon. Excellent growth. This is the proof that the spawning stock is too high.
Really what you're saying, Jon, is what's happening in our rivers is exactly the same what's happening in our seas. If it's, it's the same.
Yes, and they struggle to release the fish in order to increase the spawning. I have looked at the data on the par in the rivers. There's plenty of par in the river. But they report also there are maybe 2,000 salmon-eating birds.
Yeah.
Like ducks and what do you call it? This, which is in the sea? Big ones. Skarver, see we say skarver.
Oh, yeah. Cormorants. We call them, a by name for us is scarfies, which is very similar to.
Skarver is it, and they eat in the river, and it's strange things that it is. We have been taking into by releasing or making fish ladders in falls to increase the nourishment area, but this doesn't affect the number of fish caught in the river, which is very, very, very strange. We should expect that if you double the nursing area for par, you would maybe increase by 50% the return. But it doesn't happen. And why is that? I read a study by Elson in the 50s. He was investigating how much the mergansers was eating in the stock, and he said that they are predator of type C. They go to the river and they fish and eat until it doesn't pay more, until their catch is too low that they leave or go to another place. So they always eat the rivers down to the same level, no matter how many comes down. It is like when we are picking berries. Whether there's a lot of berries in the beginning of the season or few, there are always the same quantity left when you have picked it. You pick until you don't bother to catch more. That's the same thing. They regulate the population. This is nature working again.
Thank you for listening to Seafood Matters podcast. You can subscribe and leave a review wherever you get your podcasts. You can join me on Instagram and Facebook by searching for @Seafood Matters Podcast. If you have any questions or episode suggestions, please email me at jim@seafoodmatterspodcast.com or get in touch through my website, seafoodmatterspodcast.com.